There is a sickness in this village. Perhaps you would not see it from a distance, and the faint sting of rot in the breeze is easy enough to dismiss. But as you get closer, that infectious feeling of wrongness is harder and harder to shake. The grass is not the green of nature. The buildings are warped by more than age, and the voices that come from behind the inhabitants' masks are hoarse and wet. They move with exaggerated casualness, a parody of idyllic village life. And when they take a break from weeping, they reassure each other of how wonderful it is in their village, or at least how wonderful it used to be. Each is covered head to toe in thick black fabric, and they never, ever touch. Take a deep breath. The air feels thick and soupy in your lungs, swarming with 1,000 contagions digging into you, begging for you to join the village. It's so quiet in there, and everyone cares for each other, far from the din and compacted flesh of the city. In the center are maypole stands, mildewed strips of colored cloth hanging limply from it like shreds of ragged skin. The base of the pole is ashen and charred. The disease itself is nothing special. It begins as a small patch of discolored skin, the tiniest blemish. Scrub it off and it is gone. For a few hours, at least. But it returns again and again, and begins to spread. A mold with tendrils that burrow deep. It ranges in color from rancid yellow and corpse-fat white to the dull, angry purple of a fresh bruise. It itches and burns, and you can feel it growing and spreading inside of you, looking for the core of you, at least until it worms its way into your bones. Beneath the coat of each terrified citizen of this sick village lies a lurking possibility, a nightmarish suspicion of infectious constellations of hungry mildew, a mutating technical atlas of rotten and pockmarked flesh. But who can say for sure? Their coats are oh so thick. There was never a time before the disease, no matter what the old bastards tell you. It has always been in the village, always festered in the dark corners where no one could stomach to check, where good neighbors wouldn't dream to speculate. But those who live here will tell you different. From behind their masks, those friendly voices will tell you how it used to be, clean and hygienic and always bathed in sepia sunshine. They know in the guts of them that this sickness has come from outside, that it is those from beyond the village that has done this to them. They brought it here, they whisper to each other in the unnamed pub, hunched and bloated over their pale, stinking beers, lifting their masks to take a mouthful, puce faces and frightened sneers exposed for just a moment. They couldn't leave us well enough alone. They wanted what we have, a perfect, peaceful life. So they dragged their sickness here and damned us all. The patrons speak quietly, 'cause who can say for sure that the face behind a mask is a good, honest village face, or a sickness-bearing harbinger from beyond? And people do still come to the village, for however thick the paranoia, however terrible the disease, there are worse things beyond. They are stopped, of course, beaten and stripped and checked from head to toe for any sign of infection. The village council sees to that. Most are uncontaminated, though that does little to save them, while others are already laced through with fungus of their own. A few are spared brutality, and treated with such cordial politeness that you would have thought they are Inquisitor's old friends. Though it seems on the surface no rhyme to such decisions, Were you to look below their coats, you might see the patterns of their mould were matched. It is, alas, those who are unblemished who suffer worse. So incomprehensible it is that any from the outside could be clean, that there might be another source or vector. The inspectors devise another theory. An invisible infection. 100 typhoid Marys, spreading mildew and decay. They keep them in the post office, wrapped in chicken wire, prodded and jeered and watched. Should they begin to show signs of the rot, then maybe, just maybe, they can stay for now, though nobody would doubt that it was they who brought the illness. But if they stay clean, if they continue to act like they were better, like they are above the sickness that it is certain they must have brought to the village, then that cannot be endured. So they are taken to the village green, and the scorch marks at the base of the maypole get darker. The villagers stand on the green to watch, ignoring the bending of the grass as it tries to worm its way into their boots. They watch the screaming outsider as the fire purifies them, and inside they feel the gnawing panic of their own secrets. For how long ago did they really come to the village? How deep did their roots go? Do any of them truly remember? What if they are an outsider? What if they're found out? No, such fears are to be quashed and swallowed. They must stand strong. They must stand together as one body against the mass of those beyond the village who would see them degraded and destroyed. They cannot allow such secret terrors to break their unity, and the maypole watches over all. There is no house in town that has not found itself marked with the red cross of the plague. But paint is fleeting, and the villagers are so desperate to hide their state. Night still falls here, if only to give those that wish a chance to try and hide their frantic denials. As the weak dawn breaks, you may count 2 of the doors now painted white, and see who is more conscientious in covering their spongy skin. The deception is pitiable, and yet deep down every villager knows the mold has marked them deeper than any of the others, and carries it as their most secret shame. Foremost in their denials are the village council, those loud and hearty souls who have taken it upon themselves to police this place, to safeguard their traditions and denounce the infection. That is the right and proper punishment for those who would allow the village borders to be breached and their ancient way of life to be compromised. Their masks are blue, red, and white, and their coats are the color of fresh ivory, stained sometimes with crimson from their dutiful ministrations. None would dare accuse them of infection, and to cross them or draw their eyes to invite the strongest diagnosis. Head of the council is Gillian Smith. Her father's 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 father built the maypole, carved from a jackleberry tree and painted in the colors of the village. This place is her home, and her right and her duty, and woe to any fungus-riddled outsider who might believe it otherwise. For no one would speak up if Gillian Smith were to mark you infected or declare you foreign. No one would lift a finger as they dragged you to the green. Her gloves are purest white and never sullied, and they hide a cerulean mold that covers every inch of her, through skin, muscle, and organ, though she has no idea it runs so deep. By night she sits in the quiet darkness of her perfect cottage, peeling herself with a straight razor, layer by layer, desperate to reach the pure flesh she is so sure must still be in there, somewhere. Her living room is the same suffocation blue as the rest of her. every surface piled high with her own discarded bloody skin, and she has no terror deeper than the thought that she might be discovered. As she pulls spongy strips free, one agonizing fiber at a time, she stares from her window at the house of her neighbor, Mrs. Kim. Mrs. Kim is not on the village council. Mrs. Kim keeps to herself, and Julian Smith is certain Mrs. Kim is not infected, and hates her for it. What Mrs. Kim is scared. Scared of her neighbors, scared of her friends, scared of the moment when someone will smell the spreading patch of darkness on her back and decide she is infected. Or remember that she has only been in the village since her grandfather's day, and judge her to be an outsider. Should she accuse someone else? Send them to the village green? Perhaps she might petition to join the village council, though that would invite their attention as much as anything might. Even through the masks, Mrs. Kim knows the look she gets in the pub. But what can she do? When she hears the shouts outside and sees the smoke pouring from the thatch roof, she knows it is too late. They drag her to the maypole, their masks hiding the tears of terror and angry shame, and lash her there with those strips of cloth that never seem to burn. Mrs. Kim does not fight, though she screams and screams as all her fears are realized. Julian Smith tries to smile as she watches her neighbor burn, but the fungus is too thick around her lips, and her face no longer moves. As the flames consume the last of Mrs. Kim in thick, acrid smoke, the mold reaches the bones of Julian Smith, and she blooms. In a moment she is swollen, bloated, bursting into a cloud of violent spores that envelop the green, and those who dwell there, embracing them in a rot that has long since seeped into the soil of this blighted land.